at the swearing-in ceremony of the new ministers, where he reeled out his expectations and those of Nigerians to the members of the new cabinet.
As you are aware, the core objectives of this administration is to improve security, achieve diversified, inclusive economic growth, and fight corruption. I am convinced that we can build a buoyant economy that supports inclusive growth and creates broad-based prosperity for every Nigerian, one that will absorb the 2 million Nigerians entering the labor market each year, as well as reduce the backlog of over 20 million unemployed or unemployable Nigerians. We must also intensify efforts to reduce internal security threats and eliminate corruption at all levels so as to ensure that our citizens have a safe and corruption-free environment where they can live and conduct their businesses without fear and intimidation. I am pleased to note that at the end of the retreat, we have agreed and prioritized the key strategic initiatives required to drive socio-economic growth in our country, which must be accomplished because the people of Nigeria expect nothing less from us. We have also agreed on the exploratory key performance indicators and deliverables to be achieved in the roadmap on government priorities 2019 to 2023. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our primary business over the next 4 years is to work together towards delivering the results that the people of Nigeria expect from us. We have a great opportunity as an administration to build on the progress already made in order to fundamentally shift Nigeria's trajectory on the path of steady growth and development. Let me also emphasize that as heads of your respective ministries and for effective implementation of your mandates, you are required to work closely with the permanent secretaries and chief executive officers of agencies under your purview. This has become necessary considering the fact that the task of moving the country to the next level requires dedication, focus, and collective efforts.
Okay, you just listened to excerpts from the President's address to the newly appointed Federal Executive Council members. All right, let's kick off the conversation. From us here in the studio, we've guests have joined us. Let me begin the introduction with Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, who is a public affairs analyst and a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Hamisu, always a pleasure to have you with us.
The pleasure is all mine. Good morning, Nigerians.
Yeah, and we also have one of our own, and very soon we will put a tag on Jude Ojo as NTA Good Morning Nigeria's special analyst. Good morning, Jude. Thank you for joining us.
Good people of a great nation, I greet you. Good morning.
All right. Jume.
Yes, and we'll also have in the studio, in our Benin studio, we're being joined by Gabriel Osaworo, public affairs analyst. It's a pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Glad to be here.
So we'll begin with.
All right, let's begin on a general note. Gentlemen, you've all seen the faces of the appointees. You've seen the face of the cabinet and the drivers towards 2023. And let me start with Benin by, of course, Gabriel Osaworo, who is a public affairs analyst. From the composition and alignment of responsibilities, if you may, do this cabinet, do the face you see reflect the passion and ambition towards 2023?
I beg your pardon, I didn't hear you clearly.
the cabinet in composition and alignment of responsibilities or assignment of responsibilities, does it reflect the passion and ambition of the president to deliver, by 2023?
Promising. Looking at the caliber of the men and women he's assembled and the way he's assigned the portfolios to them, it's a very good beginning. Apart from every state, as stipulated by the Constitution, having a minister in the cabinet, every geopolitical region also has an additional minister. So it's a very large team, and they have a varied background. And going by the address he read while inaugurating them, I think he means business, and we are to hope and support all the ministers to see what kind of policies they are going to enunciate from now on, realizing that they actually are at the policy level, and there is a very long distance between the level of policy making and the point of service delivery, which will matter to Nigerians. I believe they have the caliber to know the mechanisms they are going to put in place to make sure Nigerians benefit, to make sure the intention of the president, their principal, is carried out, and Nigerians have cause to be grateful to the government for the next 4 years.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Okonzua Osaworo, Dr. Okonzua. Coming back to the studio, Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamishu, people say there's a twist, a sweet twist actually, to the cabinet ministers. What's your take on that?
Well, from what the president has done so far and from his address, I would say it is quite interesting. Apart from the persons, the last time we focused on the nominees, we agreed on something, that it doesn't matter the degree one possesses. What is of utmost importance is the mind to assemble teams, the mind to listen to the expert, and the will to take those actions and decisions that will be beneficial to the people. Now, the president has gone further to say, okay, coming from the past experience, maybe there are things that we needed to improve upon, which was what we talked about, that were there lessons learned, which informed the dropping of some ministers and addition of some ministers, and then maybe creation of additional ministry. Now, from what has happened, from the policy direction, the key performance indicators, as well as deliverables, has pointed to one direction, that we are going somewhere, and this is the roadmap. The only thing that is left is for the roadmap to be unveiled to the public. In addition to what Doctor said, that Nigerians should support the ministers, we want to know the key performance indicators. We want to know the deliverables, so that we can hold these very particular ministers accountable. And then we can, by doing that again, we are assisting them, we are supporting them.
Let me just not allow you to fast forward us.
Okay.
But so far, what's your thought about composition, the faces you see?
The faces, I don't have problem with the faces I've seen. Because I said something. All you needed as a minister is in your ministry.
Okay.
So the problem is the person that is managing the ministry.
Okay, fine. Chidoju, you have written an open letter, and I read quite a lot of it. But one thing I'd like to start off with you is the fact that you said in that letter you wrote to Mr. President is that you do not subscribe to the school of thought that anybody can serve anywhere. Those were your words. But put that aside. Do you see any glimmer of light from the cabinet?
Of course, there is glimmer of hope and light. I was postulating yesterday morning. I gave a lot of advisories. I said the president should not hold on to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, because I want him to be able to have sufficient time to superintend the 43-member cabinet.
We'll take you on those points.
Yeah. So we have 44-member cabinet now with the president himself as one. But there is glimmer of hope. Look at Pantami. You could have made a better choice of who should be Minister of Communication. And then, of course, Minister of Defense is a retired Major General. You have an engineer, and the Minister of Power. And everybody has said, look, you need to have somebody in power. If you really, making a superwoman of Fashola in the first time was a very big error. The staff of that ministry will tell you that there was a divided attention. one was getting more attention than the other. The man was focusing more on power than on housing and works. Now he has his work cut out for him. I had expected that even housing would be on its own, but the president caught everybody napping, establishing Ministry of Humanitarian Services and social disaster management and social development. We didn't see that coming. I also didn't see coming the reinstatement of Ministry of Police Affairs and Ministry of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs. These are echoes from the past, because we've had those under past administration where we have Ministry of Intergovernmental Affairs. But it's good that at least we've reduced substantially Minister of State, because he was warning that there should be no internal wrangling. Usually, when you have a substantive minister and one or two ministers of state, there is that tendency, even from the conversation of ordinary Nigerians, they say this is a junior minister. There's nothing like junior minister. But the perception is that if you are said to be a minister of state, you are more like a subordinate to the substantive, which is not so. Because each of them is representing a state, and each of them will get equal remuneration, from my own understanding. So, but the president has been able to rejig a number of things. In fact, do the needful by merging finance, national planning, and budget, so that it's within one portfolio. And that's, you should thank him for making a woman such a super minister. He removed the super minister from a man and gave it to a woman. Right, so that's a very good one for the
women are super. And one thing of note that I noticed in the president's speech yesterday, and I quote, the president said, "We must work as a team. It demands that we know what the next person is doing. You must open communication with your colleagues. Lack of communication leads to lack of cooperation and suboptimal performance."
I couldn't agree more with him on that point, because it is very important that, like I said in that open letter, together everyone achieves more. That's what team means. When you work as a team, you work seamlessly with your Minister of State, work seamlessly with your Permanent Secretary. It helps, because this is about national service. It's not about personal aggrandizement. If the administration succeeds, it will be to the glory of everyone who was part of that team. Yes. If it fails, they will all share in the blame. So it is good that is drummed into their ears that, look, this is not a time to grandstand and say, look, I'm the super minister here, I'm the one in charge now. No, everybody has something to contribute. You can't discount even all the ministers must. I said it in that open letter. See yourself as a part of subsect of a system. Yes. And everybody, because if you fail to pull your weight, it affects the entire system in terms of delivery. And every ministry matters. Every minute, look at the ingenuity of even creating that Ministry of National Disaster Management, Humanitarian, because we now have that as part of our national challenge. Look at the millions of people who are in IDP camps. People need, beyond NEMA, you need to have a ministry that focuses on how to, help improve the living standard of those people who are victims of insurgency and insecurity that we have in the country. So I think the president was on point with that. Although I didn't agree with him with all the postings, so I must be sincere with him.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Now that you have started talking about the unbundling and, of course, the creation of new ministries, let's bring Dr. Okunzwa from Benin. Dr. Okunzwa, I didn't know why I had to call you Gabriel in the first place, and you didn't correct me, but we do apologize for that. Let's begin with power. Now, did it come to you as a surprise that the president had to unbundle, the super ministry, that's the former Ministry of Power, Works and Housing? Because even as far back as 2017, the National Assembly, in one of their resolutions, had harped on, the unbundling of that sector. So did it come as a surprise to you?
Not at all. The president was the man who was voted into office by Nigerians. So it is up to him to select whoever he is pleased with, subject to the provision of the Constitution and other laws, to make sure his mandate is well fulfilled. So if he trusted a man and believed he had to concentrate certain ministries in his hands, I think that was the kind of intention he was trying to project to Nigerians, that he took those ministries very seriously and he trusted the man and so on. Now that he's also unbundled it, maybe it's hard to rethink. And just like Jide in the studio has been saying, the creation of the humanitarian ministry, I'm sorry I cannot capture the full length well at this stage, for me means the president has been scanning his environment very well and people have been advising him correctly, and he's also responded in a very cogent way. So, well, the ministers have just been inaugurated. We are to support them, cooperate with them at all the levels we can, and we are to hope that they will have the focus of Nigerians and then pursue the welfare of Nigerians in their respective departments. It's a good beginning. I believe every person there is fit, going by the bio data we read about them, and we wish them well, hoping the environment will not constrain them. They will have the resources to implement whatever they have in mind, being the agents of the president. So we look forward to a good performance from all of them. And my other colleague in the studio there has talked about the key performance indices. Let's see. We just hope, as I said earlier, that the environment will be propitious, they will have the resources, and the yearnings of Nigerians will be met accordingly.
Sorry, still staying with you, Dr. Okonzwa, with power. Let's deal with the issue of power. I'm wondering, now we have the Minister of Power, Engineer Salim Maman from Taraba is the new Minister of Power, of course, and Godi Jedi Agba as the Minister of State for Power. Now, if we look at the indices, Nigeria is generating about, I'm not sure now, maybe between 5,000 to 7,000 megawatts out of about 180 million people. Listen to these statistics of US and India. India is a country with a population of 1.3 billion and is generating 1.36 billion megawatts. US is also generating 4.3 billion megawatts out of over 300, people. And Nigeria is 180 and we are generating between 5,000 to 7,000. Now, with this new ministry on its own, what value do you think we're going to add?
Just like one had the privilege to say a while ago, the president, he scanned his environment well. He had the benefit of a first term, and the second term now conferred on him by Nigerians. He's probably known where the gaps were during the first term, and he's rearranged his ministries. Of course, that is some of the tools available to him to select the men and women that will form his team. And this time around, he's dedicated a full ministry to the issue of power. Looking at the statistics you have just read out, I don't think any Nigerian is in doubt that the ratios are not in our favor. And the ambassador of a first world country during their national independence day recently actually mentioned it to us, that if we got our power situation right, most of our problems will be resolved. So there's no doubt about that. So creating a ministry and dedicating it to the issue of power is a very good way to focus and concentrate on that challenge, because it's going to prove pivotal if we got it right. So I think it's an opportunity to for the two gentlemen who the ministry is entrusted to study the history of their ministry, the history of their sector, and actually have a very deep look at some of the factors that have held us back. And then look at how we can get cooperation, get whatever expertise we need, maybe look at all the laws governing the sector, how do we get the resources and so on. Because, just like that ambassador said, if we got the power sector right, poverty alleviation, job generation, and so on and so forth, they will all begin to fall in place. So it's a right step that a whole ministry now has been dedicated to power sector, and two men are in charge of that ministry. So I think it's a good beginning too.
Thank you, Doctor. Coming back to studio, Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu. Power, they say it's essential to any development of a country. Yeah. And we now have a Ministry of Power. We're still staying on that. A lot of businesses have left Nigeria. in previous years, in the past 4 years, because they felt that they couldn't operate because the power was just not there.
Yeah.
Do you think that with the new power ministry and the new power minister, you know, we can woo investors back into this country if we work well on it? Just
Well,
like Claire, you know, read out some countries who have better megawatts of power. Can we do that in Nigeria?
We can do that. You see, the problem has not always been what to do. The problem is the will to do the right things. So even if we give 3 men that ministry and the 3 men are not willing to do the right things, we will not get the right result. I want to say something. I think one of the things Mr. President has done is to commission a study of power challenge or the diagnostics of power challenge in Nigeria. And Siemens was contracted to do that. And they started in 2016. They visited all the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT, and I think the report is ready. That is why there was a signing of a contract agreement between the government and Siemens. Now, that contract is not coming from anywhere. As usual, you come with your MOU and you get some persons to push it. And now, what is left is to get the resources to push through whatever the recommendations are, and that the 2 men that are entrusted with that ministry will not distort, and then they will not bring their own, say, selfish interests to bear on the process. Once the issue of corruption has been taken care of, then I think we'll see improvement in the power sector. Now, I was talking with my engineer friend, and this is what he said. He said anywhere in the world, he said $1 million will give 1 megawatt of electricity. $1 million, that is the standard rate. That, okay, in Africa, for maybe for the terrain and other stuff, say from 1.1 million, 1.2 million, 1.3 million, it's enough to get 1 megawatt of electricity. Now, the problem with Nigeria has never been the production of electricity. It has always has to do with transmission and distribution. Now, the second thing again that is not happening in this country is government has never challenged our tertiary educational institution to come up with challenges as to what we can do as a country. So nearly everything we are contracting, nearly everything we are importing, and we don't have the resources to do all of this. And that is why developing local capacity is very important. We have universities of technology all over Nigeria. So what stops us from exploring what we can do as a nation in terms of cost saving? Because Nigeria, yes, Nigeria is rich in terms of resources, but that resources has not translated into physical cash with which we can do so many things. And that is why countries are moving towards self-reliance. So in Nigeria, we must tackle this issue creatively. So if we are able to generate, assuming we are contracting generation, what can we do to start handling what? Transmission. For God's sake, we have Ministry of Science and Technology, Innovation, and what. So, and those. So, what are we doing? We have all the University of Technologies. We have all the polytechnics that are supposed to become solution providers. So, these are some of the things we want to see. The roadmap is there. The roadmap is clear, and that is why government is thinking of taking back the discourse. Because what happened with that? You know, we know what happened.
Yes.
Because what happened was, okay, we want to privatize.
Yeah.
But
that's what I was going to ask, because just before we leave the power sector,
yes,
because this is a major sector that a lot of people have been, asking
everything
to be unbundled.
revolves around power
sector. Jide Ojo, remember that the power sector is privatized right now, and the NERC is still regulating, the whole NEM value chain. What more can the ministry do if that still pertains? How can we get our priorities right if that is still the case?
I will tell you for free that our major challenge with power sector is corruption and opacity in the administration of that sector. We have been mouthing and parroting this power sector reform for over 20 years. But the more you look, the less you see. A lot of resources have been sunk into different power projects. How do you, look at the energy mix that everybody is talking about. We have wind, we have sun, that's solar, we have thermal. Now, we sometimes build thermal stations without taking cognizance of gas supply to those thermal stations. And you pipe gas supply from the Niger Delta to Lagos, Geregu, this one at Egbin Power Station, we have Geregu, we have a motor show, we have all of this. Papalanto, all of them are depending on Tama. So you see, there is also the issue of sabotage in our continued underdevelopment of the power sector.
Okay.
My professor in the university said this over 20 years ago. He said, look, there are some interest group who are making mega bucks, importing generators. They will never want sustainable power supply because they will be run out of business. Okay, so indirectly, they encourage people to go and vandalize cables and destroy things that government has provided. So for me, if you remove corruption, if you remove abuse of power, you then have to incentivize people. Look, each university should be self-sustaining in energy production.
Okay, Jide, because we have to look at other sectors too. So for you, remove corruption and
energy mix. You incentivize different, like you are trying to do for the energy, like oil and gas, where you want to do modular refinery. Each university, for instance, should be able to generate power sustainably to power. If they all do that and they are off the national grid, you can see that there will be more available for domestic consumption by people.
Yes, and Dr. Amisu, you feel you need to react to some of these issues.
It's just the disco issue.
Yes.
What happened with disco is the fact that most of the people that clearly come out to say we've won the bid, despite they were more competent persons, that we won the bid, since they got that those allotment, they've never sunk money into discos again. So what they're doing is estimated billings, and they're making money off the people, and there is no improvement in service delivery. I'll give you one instance. When the privatization was done, most of them were not willing to buy the disco in the Northeast because they feel it was a hub of insurgency. It's still being managed by government. Yeah. And those in the Northeast are getting more light than those areas that there are no insurgency.
Yeah, so quickly, what should be for the new ministers now, because these are new ministers, Engineer Salim Maman and his Minister of State for Housing, that's Abubakar Aliyu.
Yes.
So what should be their focus now?
Their focus is just to, there is a roadmap in place right away.
Okay.
Their major work is not to distort the roadmap.
Okay.
It's to assist Mr. President with the best of advice and then to ensure that there is sustainable funding and that those discos should be taken back. It's not as if government should contemplate. And my reason is simple. If the insurgency-infested areas that they refuse to buy is giving more light, what more are we talking about in terms of private management of assets? So what are we talking about? We have two templates now to compare. So the basic thing that has been happening is distortion. So for instance, you have megawatts.
We have to move away from power, Dr. Amisu. Okay, let's get back to Dr. Okonzwa in Benin. You've got your next question.
Yes, I would like to ask him a question based on youth empowerment and employment. We have 63 million youths out there just waiting for an opportunity to excel. And this new cabinet comes in, we have a new minister for youth and sports. What do you think she should do in ensuring that our youth are carried along in this process that we're undergoing now?
The president himself said so at the inauguration still, that we have 2 million young persons entering the labor market yearly. We have to find a way to receive them to the labor market profitably and the rest of it. To care for the young persons of the country will go beyond job provision alone. The way we educate them, the way we care for them if they are ill, the general environment we create for them. So it's actually beyond the Minister for Youth. But he can actually drive the agenda. Just like the president himself said that there should be communication, there should be collaboration amongst his ministers. The Minister of Youth, for instance, has a lot to do with the Minister of Education. We have a lot of our young persons, depending on the cutoff, in the primary schools, secondary schools, universities, the national youth service, and so on and so forth. So it's to create an environment for them to emerge as useful citizens, both to the country and to themselves, citizens who will be of high quality that we can entrust this nation to in the future. I think that will be the task of any Minister of Youth Affairs.
All right, Doc, let's come back to Jide. The housing deficit is still very, very high. Very high. Now, Babatunde Fashola is the Minister for Works and Housing. And Abubakar Aliyu Yobe, is Minister of State for Works and Housing. What can be done? What are we likely to see now? Is he now better placed to perform?
Well, it's a debatable issue when we say we have 17 million housing deficit and all of that, and government is trying to build homes for people. I think the right incentive should be bringing down the cost of building materials, and also democratize this land use act that's made governors to be the only one that can, because there's a lot of corruption in the housing sector. Face it, to even get CFO on a landed property, many houses, in fact, 3/4 of houses in Nigeria do not have CFO. Where would they get it? Because some people it has become a huge racket that before a governor will sign your CFO, the bottleneck is so much that if you don't settle people along the way, you likely not going to have any titles to your homes. And what happens in that sense is that you cannot collateralize it. You cannot use it as a collateral to obtain loan and all of that. Even access to land, there is still a lot of fighting about one plot of land being sold to multiple individuals. And if you say government should be the one to build those 17 million houses that are in deficit, according to estimate, where would the resources for that come from? Even if you have that resource, how then do you ensure that the process is also not fraught with corruption, that people who are already who are not in need of those houses are still not the one that will end up with it and then inflate the price in selling off? Because what we have seen, even with shopping malls and all, when other local government or state builds shopping malls and all and said they are letting it out, government will be very considerate, giving it out as rock bottom price. But some people will buy more than one. Some will buy 10, 15, 20 and start reselling at the prevailing market price, making huge profit out of it. So for me, yes, we have, and when you talk of housing deficit, it's also skewed. You don't have housing problem in rural communities. It's only in urban centers.
But Jide, we do have a housing challenge. We do have
especially
a need,
here in Abuja.
Yeah, no, we do have a need for housing. And one thing you cannot take away is that the gap is wide. Whether 17 million, whether you are debating,
the gap is wide.
What I'm saying is now we have a Fashola who has been relieved of one very critical ministry. He is now in charge of works and housing. Is he now better placed, to rejig some of those things that you're saying? What is the challenge before him?
Definitely is better placed. I mean, I know in his first time he was trying to build houses across the 36 states. I think he started, I don't know whether he has completed many of the housing projects that he has. But I was at a function, Buhari meter functions organized by CDD, where he was one of the ministers that attended that function at Sheraton Hotel. And he was saying, do Nigerians want a low-cost housing or what was the alternative that he was projecting? Because the building materials are not cheap. Now you want low-cost housing. One bedroom flat that will go for maybe 500,000, you buy it up. Where is that? When you look at the cost of building materials, which many of them are imported, they are not produced locally. So at the end of the day, if government were to build those houses, government will run it at a loss, unless if you want to subsidize. And like I tried to paint the picture, you build a 3-bedroom for maybe 15 million. And the low-cost people, the ordinary people that middle income and that you want them to have advantage of that, cannot afford it. And the mortgage system in Nigeria is not working. What I would have expected is to make the mortgage system work so that people can have high moratorium on, if you decide to go for 3-bedroom government apartment, you have like 10-15 years to pay back. Not that you have to put cash down for you to be able to take. I mean, that was what was done to many of the housing estates. This Game Village, this Festac, Jakonde estates in Lagos. You have longer period to pay. You pay money is deducted from your money, from your salaries, and you have like 10-15 years within which to pay, so that it doesn't become like a huge burden to you paying. But it's not, government cannot provide the sufficient number of houses or homes for people who are in that need.
So what should Fashola be thinking of doing?
There are different models that can be done. Like I said, if you can find a way of bringing down the cost of building materials and get people access to land in a seamless way that, like everything is not bureaucratized, you can get genuine land that they will not say is government land 10, 5, 15 years after you built on it. They say, you have built on government property, and then you come and carry your house, and then it becomes a problem. That's what we have seen with many, because there is even no sensitization about which one is government land that is not already in use, and maybe it's for future government projects. So people go and buy from so-called people who have already been compensated, and then 5-10 years after they have built homes, the government comes to recover its own land. So there is a lot that needs to be done, a lot of sensitization, a lot of, how to ensure that you bring down the cost of building materials in such a manner that people of low income can afford to build. And then you also regulate the standards, because the building cost is not respected in Nigeria. We have a lot of challenge. People just build on drainages. People get all manner of people build on road areas that are so you need to do a lot of that, but it needs the coordination and support of state government and local government. You cannot do it alone from Abuja. You can't legislate that. Thankfully, housing is not on the exclusive legislative, it's under the concurrent list. So you need to carry the states along.
So we'll now move from housing to
sorry,
health.
sorry, before you move, Dr. Hamisu, I remember we hosted the minister, I'm talking about Fashola on these programs, during the last term.
Yes.
And he did hint on the fact that he was trying to address the issue of mortgage you talked about. So from your perspective, what would be your advice to him now to be able to address the housing challenge that we have at the moment?
You see, there are so many factors. There is one critical factor that my friend Jojo did not touch on. It has to do with the income of the working class.
Yes.
In a situation whereby everybody is a local government unto itself, you generate your own power, you take care of your own health, you pay tuition fee, transportation is not cheap. At the end of it all, your money goes into what? Servicing your basic needs. So how do you go to approach mortgage bank to give you
But what is the role of the mortgage bank?
So now you see, now what has happened? You see, under Federal Housing Authority, what happened? People contributed money. Up to this point, they don't even know where their monies are.
Yes.
Now the issue of trust is very key in every system. Now let us take what Lee Kuan Yew did to solve housing problem in Singapore. There was a pool of money. This contributory health insurance scheme, NHIS, just the one we have here, he started it in Singapore. But because the income was increasing, because the economy was becoming buoyant and the people were earning, health issues were no longer coming, so people don't really depend on these savings because of hygiene has improved, so health has decreased. So he picked funding from that very particular contribution, and then he put it into the housing sector, very affordable houses, and he sensitized the people to say, we are transforming. So you need to leave your mud houses and what, and come to these buildings. It's affordable. Your income can take it. You have like 5 to 10, 15 years to pay, and then you are comfortable. because your income can take it. There is trust. If you contribute 10 naira, it reflects on your account. But where you contribute money, it takes you like 1 year before you find your file. You have to bribe a lot of persons before they could even say they've seen your file. Okay, how much have I contributed? They will tell you, come today, come tomorrow. And then at the end of it all, you just say, I leave them to God. And tomorrow somebody comes and say, please, come and put your money into this housing project. Who would do that? So, and that is why Nigerians are desperate to build. And then if you go to the suburb, you see all manner of houses. Some, they can't pass for store. And somebody will tell you, well, since I'm not paying rent, I'm okay. So, the first thing is trust. The second thing is innovative thinking. I had cause to interrogate my friend. He has money. He's a contractor. Why are you not keen into the housing program for the state? He said, no, it is not lucrative. Because by the time I spend my money to build the houses, the price federal government is saying we should sell these houses cannot really give me back my money, and I will make profit.
Okay, finally for you, okay, can you now give a word of advice to the minister and the new minister of state?
To the new minister of state, honestly, they know what they need to do. It's the will to do them. The first thing they need to do is not to give one person monopoly to be importing zinc or say cement. We need creative ways to do things. And what can we do as a nation? We have all the agencies of government that are into, let me give you one problem we have in this country. Ministry of Science and Technology Innovation has the mandate to produce only prototypes. They can't produce for sales because the act said to them, you can only produce prototypes. So they produce prototypes and they keep it on the shelf. Now, can't we challenge them to start coming out with innovative ways of sourcing building materials locally, and then we have our houses built at a cheaper rate because they have the mandate to do so. So that those things that are on the shelf can become consumables for Nigerians. So the act establishing that very particular institution is supposed to be amended. And lastly, I want to say something to what my friend said about Ministry of Youth and Sport. I find that name very, very inconvenient as far as I'm concerned.
Why?
Nigerian youth are not for sports alone. We have creative Nigerian youth. For instance, there is this creativity industry financing scheme. Now, it's meant to harness the talent of Nigerians. But most Nigerian youth don't even know about this very particular. So you reduce a whole ministry of youth. Assuming we say, okay, Ministry of Youth, right? Not youth and sport development, which means just sport. And we don't even have sport academies all over the country that is even grooming our young persons to be hired abroad at a fee that Nigeria can make substantial amount of money. So the Ministry of Youth revolves around two things, youth and NYSC. And that ends it. That ends it.
So now that the minister
so there
has
should
been
be a change.
appointed,
Yes.
what change are you envisaging?
My change, if you say Ministry of Youth and say youth and creativity or youth and national development, now every initiative that you have on youth will go to that very particular ministry. And any youth, for instance, I was watching online, Channels Television did a documentary of a young man in, Anambra, that invented a generator that is using water. So if such person knows that, okay, I can take my creativity to a Ministry of Youth and I can sit with somebody that can link me to funding, then I know where I'm supposed to go to. But here, if what you have for youth is in CBN, is in Bank of Industry, is in agriculture, I don't know whether I'm getting it. Yes. And there is no clear entry point where this youth can take. There was another one again, I think it was in Anambra, I was watching. The guy sourced local materials and designed power station. And the prototype is there. You could see how he did the networking and everything, and it will give light. Okay. Now, it cannot come to Ministry of Youth because it is Ministry of Youth and Sport. So how is that ministry going to address?
You go to Ministry of Science and Tech.
I think there are policies that address
Ministry of Science and
this.
Tech.
Now what we are saying, for instance, if it is Minister of Youth and it comes, it is something that has to do with youth, is passionate about youth. This ministry will now do everything for this youth and said, okay, we will link you with Ministry of what? Science and Tech. Then there is that collaboration that Mr. President is talking about. And then Ministry of Youth, at any time, we could say, what is the statistic of youth that you've done this and this with. They can produce it.
Okay, Dr. Hamiso.
Yes, I'll be going back to Benin where Dr. Okozwa is waiting. We've talked about power, we've talked about housing, we've talked about youth empowerment. Let's look at the health sector. The medical tourism is a dent on the nation's reputation around the world. And now we have a new minister in the health sector. How would that reflect back home? How can we bring back all this money spent abroad trying to get treatment? Our hospitals, I'm sorry to say, some of them are an eyesore. A lot of Nigerians are afraid to go to hospitals in Nigeria. And the brain drain itself is really, really eating into the health system. How can we do to revive the health system and bring back our people out there who are helping to upgrade the health system of other countries? What do we do in that sector? What advice do you have for the minister coming in?
You have said the two gentlemen who are overseeing the Ministry of Health at this stage, I think they have a very good idea of what our state is. The former Minister of State is now the substantive minister or the minister himself. And the Minister of State, the former Speaker of the most populous state in Nigeria, House of Assembly of the most popular state in Nigeria, a very senior medical practitioner as well. I think they have an idea that the health sector in Nigeria is in a parlous state, and nobody denies that. As for medical tourism and all that, that can be reversed easily depending on the investment we make. So it's going to be a thing they will need to study themselves, right from the kind of caliber of persons we train, we recruit, how we recruit them, how we motivate them, how our hospitals are designed, even in terms of architecture, how our healthcare system is financed, and so on. So it's not a thing that can be dismissed off the cuff. But I think they have the ability to study the system and know what and what to recommend to the president. But the health sector is going to need a lot of investment. So much investment, so much help. Training of manpower for expertise to keep abreast the rest of the world so that the needs of Nigerians can be met. I don't really think, except for people who are just looking for ostentation or prestige, I don't think any person would like to go abroad for what he can do at home. So if we make the right investment, select the right persons, train them well, motivate them well, in another 4 years, which is the term of this administration, our healthcare system will be revamped. There's no doubt the situation is yet deplorable, but it can be improved. The two ministers can study the situation and know where to establish their priorities. I believe the challenges in our health sector can be met, and the people we have entrusted the ministry to can do it.
Thank you, Dr. Okonzwa there. Of course, Dr. Hanire, was the Minister of State for Health, who has now been upgraded to the Minister of Health. The Minister of State for Health is Dr. Olonimbe Mamora. Now, Jide, this is a sector where impact is rarely felt nor even sustained. In terms of universal health coverage, countries within the group, known as D8, these are, developing countries, or middle-income countries, are doing as much as over 90% in terms of universal health coverage. I'm not even sure what percentage Nigeria is doing. In fact, very, very, very low. And our out-of-pocket health expenses is very high. This must be a big challenge for the new ministers, both Dr. Olanibe and Hanire.
It is, and we must start something. The revolution I want the president to do is even to leave a legacy. Let's have a world-class hospital that can treat every ailment that is that we can think of, so that we can stem this brain drain and stem this medical tourism. And the president should start and make himself, that global icon that we want to see. Because when he goes to UK for his medical attention, it's not sending the right signal. And his doctors can be brought to Nigeria, at least to test, to show that, look, I believe in this system. You cannot be telling us, buy made in Nigeria, believe in Nigeria. And our president will be the one to go on medical tourism in another country. Look at what happened with Zakzaki now. He has to go to India for his medical attention. That's nonsensical. We need to have At least, even if it means public-private partnership.
It is not that one cannot seek medical, help outside for very complex, cases.
Yes, but let's be part of the global community. Fidel Castro was terminally ill in Cuba. He never went outside of Cuba to seek help elsewhere. You won't see an Israeli prime minister going to US to seek medical attention. That should be our culture. I'm not sure an Indian prime minister will come to South Africa or go to Egypt because it's about national prestige. It's about it's about our country that, look, we can do it. And it's about believing the system. Because if you don't fix it, and I know that our time is running, but I also must say this. There is need for better coordination among the three tiers of government in order to revive our decaying health care, like the primary health care centers. That's where it starts from. The primary health care centers are almost non-existent.
So how can we jack up the health insurance?
Health insurance is to incentivize people, not only government workers, to be part of the health insurance. You need to take it to the market squares. Let the market people know that through their cooperative, they can also buy into the health insurance scheme. So that, and you need to explain to them the benefit, cost-benefit analysis. Look, all these out-of-pocket expenses we are doing is not helping you. What if you don't have money and you fall sick? Well, instead of going to faith clinics and going to herbal centers, you can, with that money, or you can still access. So when people know the advantages, they will be able to join. But that sensitization has not really taken. And there is a lot of trouble, a lot of infighting, a lot of challenges with national health insurance scheme all over the last 4 years, with the leadership problem that they have, and also the fight with the HMOs, health management organizations, about service delivery and all of that. Until when we fix that, if you fix that and you make the HMO and the value chain to work optimally, so that people start seeing the benefit. That, look, even when I have ailment, without money on me, I can still access healthcare. We will not get there. So you need to bring the artisans, the ordinary people on the streets, the students, the National Youth Service Scheme, all of them. You must have different models for different category of Nigerians, so that they can all buy into it. Our NHIS enrollment is less than 10% of the population. And in US and all that, that's what Obamacare is all about, to bring more people into the health services. So we need to think out of the box and see that, look, health is wealth. And for me, our leaders should set the pace. No governor should be traveling abroad for medical care. Okay. Let them fix the problem that we have at home.
Okay, Dr. Hamiso, infrastructure is critical, but also financing models. Yes. Like I said, out of pocket is very high. Yes. And we have seen the, what would I say, the NHIS, how effective NHIS is. In fact, a lot of people are not covered within the scheme. So for you now, what should the new ministers be looking at? How should they begin to rejig that sector, so that we'll attain, because universal health coverage is very critical.
Yes.
We are yet to do 0.5% of coverage.
Yeah, I think, let me begin with this. I agree with my friend Jide Ojo that the problem of health sector in Nigeria has to do with corruption. But he highlighted some, but he didn't touch on the fundamental one. Now, the health practitioners, by the law in Nigeria, they are allowed to practice outside the normal government office they are operating. Now, this has led to a situation. There is a deliberate killing of government hospitals in favor of private hospitals that are being operated by these same doctors. So, for instance, you have scanning to do, and they will tell you the scanning machine in the hospital is bad. And then they refer you to their own hospital. So government hospital scanning is, say, 300 naira. Theirs is 2,000 naira. Yes. Now, that dovetails into even what the HMOs are charging. Part of the issue that led to the infighting you talked about was, what should be the first thing that we're supposed to do. Is this service delivery first before
Yes,
payment,
before payment.
or payment before service delivery? I think the model that was in place before the coming of Professor Yusuf was payment before service delivery. And part of the so there are other issues that led to that infighting. He is now saying is service before payment. And that led to some of the issues. Now, two things we needed to do. We must begin, okay, look at what happened in Borno State, where the governor went midnight, and there were no doctors on call. They went home.
So what do we need to do?
Now what we need to do now is to, what the governor did, he did the right things by ensuring that those that are supposed to discharge their responsibilities are held accountable. They are held accountable. That is one. The second thing is the remodeling of our hospitals. Now, why are we going to India? It's because Indians are remodeling through research and innovation, and it is internal. So the cost of treatment is cheaper because they are remodeling. They are learning from whatever mistakes they are making. Now, the issue of efficiency will come in when people learn to do the job they take oath to do. Not that you will use your position to undermine government policy in favor of your own private businesses, and then you come again to blackmail us by embarking on strike to hold the government at the jugular. So we must be patriotic enough. And if we want to reform, it's not about the ministers, it's about the health workers and how they take seriously their responsibilities.
If I can quickly chip in this, please, I beg the two ministers, please, they should maintain cordial relationship with other health workers.
We'll come to that.
Because that's a huge challenge.
Yes, we're going to
Mr. Gideon, we'll come to that. We
yes.
need to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll be discussing education and other sectors.